What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. This is the College Football National Championship betting preview and season finale for this podcast, although we'll carry on in college basketball. But what does that mean? We will listen to our 10 favorite voicemails of the year, kind of have some memories, relive some of the games that tortured us. We will award our voicemail caller of the year with the Haiti Smith Award. We will talk about the worst beats of the year. And of course, we will present our seventh annual Action Network Gambling Heisman Trophy winner. I I can't I have some bad beats. I had a good college football year. Unlucky. I mean, I paid the last 2 years for 2 years ago. We had a really good year and got really lucky, just the way the cookie crumbles. I mean, last week I had, I mean, Penn State was painful, but whatever. It was a coin flip. Bet him as a dog. Would bet him again. But I had Texas plus 10.5 live was my only bet in that game. First and goal at the one, and they gave up a touchdown the other way. Like, are you kidding me? Sneak the ball. Like one of the worst losses of the year.
I was up in the press box overlooking that goal line. I saw earlier in the game when you took the live number, which completely approved, right? I told everybody at all of our fellow companies that cover college football. And I mean, there were a lot of companies that were like, should I take Ohio State? I have money on Ohio State. I feel dirty having Ohio State. I know they shouldn't be this high. And I told everybody, I was like, I feel so comfortable with Texas plus six. Halftime came around. I feel comfortable with Texas plus six. Got down to the goal line, first and one. I felt comfortable with Texas plus six. But I swear to God, that toss, considering what Caleb Downs does, we're going to get into this in the game. Considering that Caleb Downs has completely shut off any rushing attack outside the tackles against every team in the nation, why are you running a toss?
Just sneak the ball. It works I mean, you sneak it 4 times. Unbelievable. I mean, and then they give up a 75-yard screen pass for a touchdown with 20 seconds to go in the first half. So just add it to the list. Very unlucky year, profitable year, but hopefully next year is profitable and lucky. Those are the best years. But I think I've paid back the gods enough for a couple years ago. But let's get to the national championship preview. We will have Ohio State and Notre Dame Monday night, 7:30 Eastern on ESPN from Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia. Ohio State, eight-ish point favorite, total 46 and a half. So when I break this down, let's start with when Notre Dame has the ball. I I just don't know how Notre Dame's going to move the ball. So we know it's not a dynamic passing attack. And we know they go kind of as their rushing attack goes. Well, that's not going to be easy against Ohio State, who is arguably the best run defense in college football, and they're peaking at the right time. They just faced Tennessee, Oregon, and Texas. Three really good rushing offense. Two of those teams have arguably the best offensive lines in college football. Those three teams total 96 rush attempts for 187 yards. That's less than 2 yards per carry. If you remove the 16 sacks for 118 yards, it's just 3.8 yards per carry. That's it. And Notre Dame, if you remove the 98-yard run by Jeremiah Love against Indiana, they've only averaged 3.2 yards per carry, including sacks. You remove sacks, it's only 3.8. That's it. They haven't been able to really run the ball. I don't know how they're going to run it in Ohio State. And then what's going to happen when Leonard tries to drop back to throw? Ohio State can get pressure without blitzing. That's problematic for Leonard. Leonard went under pressure and not against the blitz outside the top 100 in passer rating this year. The edge rushers for Ohio State should have a day. And how you want to attack this Ohio State teams, you got to protect. And you have to, relatively speaking, their weakness is outside at corner. Notre Dame, they don't really have the receivers to consistently beat Ohio State. So how is Notre Dame moving the ball? I don't know. I will say one prop that, I mean, like, Riley Leonard's gonna have a just unbelievable day on the ground using his legs. They're gonna have to get really creative. They're gonna have to do some trick plays. They're gonna be aggressive on fourth downs. Marcus Freeman and that whole staff's been amazing. All playoffs. Middle eight, they've dominated it all year. They're gonna have to steal possession there. I mean, all through the playoffs. It's I mean, flip the Georgia game, Penn State game. They're gonna have to get creative. One aspect, one prop that I like that I did bet Notre Dame, Aeneas Williams over 24 and a half receiving yards. He has 69 snaps in the playoffs, 11 catches for 86 yards, 12 targets on 31 routes. Love isn't fully healthy. Williams been good in pass protection. We just saw Texas spam wheel routes all day, throw to their backs. Where their backs have 9 catches. Notre Dame most likely playing from behind in this game. Gonna have to throw more. I don't think they're gonna be able to run it on Ohio State. I think Williams will have a number of opportunities in the passing attack. What Notre Dame has to do is their path here: get creative, be aggressive, win the middle eight. Their defense has to show up. So we'll get to that side of the ball. And that's what they've relied on really all year. But let's finish up on this side of the ball. What are your thoughts of how and if Notre Dame will have any success moving the ball on this Ohio State defense that's peaking at the right time?
Yeah, I think you've nailed game flow, which for me means I'm not going to have a side. If I had to have a side, I'd have Ohio State -8, but I'm not going to take a side before the game because Notre Dame has been so good in the second and third quarter. They've been so good in the middle eight. Why take a +8 when you could probably get a better number later on? These two defenses are top seven nationally in first quarter scoring allowed. Knowles, Al Golden, they have been excellent in the scripted portion of the game. I mean, it's going to be a rock fight to start. There could be an Ohio State first drive touchdown like they did against Texas. They'll come out with something scripted. I think you can get a better Notre Dame later on, middle of the second quarter, and I think you can get a better Ohio State number probably in the middle of the third quarter. So from a side perspective, I think you're right. Pay attention to what Notre Dame does in the middle of the game. Number one in the nation in middle eight scoring. Now, I found a lot of
The
props.
other thing is if they drive the field, if they actually are able to drive the field, you're going up against the number one red zone defense.
Yes. Number one finishing drives, number one red zone. Right. Second, I believe, in rush TD rate allowed. That's, this is going to be good on good. And I think really when you're looking at Notre Dame, it's better to go and find props than it is to maybe take a +8 at this time. Now let's break down the running backs here because Jeremiah Love, I don't think is going to do well here. He does gap rushing attempts, man blocking, power, counter. Notre Dame is third in rush EPA. I'm not sure it's going to matter because the Buckeyes have been elite against gap rushing attempts. Concepts using counter, concepts using man blocking up front. Jeremiah Love is going to see some resistance here. The one running back that I think is going to have success relative to where the market puts him is Jadarian Price. Jadarian Price is the running back here that runs heavy inside zone with Riley Leonard. 65% of his 118 attempts are inside zone. When you look at Ohio State, they're just 51% in stopping inside zone, and they allow a big play rate 1 of every 10. Now, Jadarian Price he's not explosive whatsoever. I project him to have 8.2 carries for 44 yards. So I like over 24 and a half rushing yards for Jadarian Price for the pure and simple fact inside zone is going to work better than hitting outside the tackles. Did you see what Texas tried to do? Texas is a complete outside zone team. Getting outside the tackles was just fruitless. So that allows Caleb Downs to load up, get to the line of scrimmage. He's playing a safety, a nickel, a Mike linebacker hybrid. He's roaming all over the place, and you're just not getting anything outside the tackles. So I do like Jadarian Price. Now, from a passing perspective, Notre Dame does not want to be in passing downs. They're 131st in pass EPA. You mentioned the pressure. It doesn't look good. I will say that Riley Leonard has been pretty good against man coverage and cover one, something he should see against this 4-2-5 of Knowles. But I think from a props perspective, I was focusing on two other players that you mentioned outside of Aeneas Williams. One is going to be Mitchell Evans and the under 33 and a half receiving yards. I do project him to have around 26 yards. So there is a little bit of value there, but consider who guards the tight ends and pass coverage. It's Caleb Downs. He's done it in the three playoff games against Tennessee, Oregon, and Texas. I just don't expect Mitchell Evans to be a big part of this inside attack for Notre Dame. Who I do expect to attack the linebackers, Cody Simon and Sonny Styles, is Jaden Greathouse. Jaden Greathouse has a huge advantage over the Ohio State linebackers. He was covered by linebackers or slot corners on 7 attempts against Penn State. He caught all seven for 105 yards and a TD. I think if there's traction in this passing offense, it's going to be short stuff to Jaden Greathouse. I think 20 and a half receiving yards. I did see one book steam up to 22. So I think your final number to me would be 30. I think he's completely underpriced. And then finally, Stuck, we were talking about this before the pod started, but I just don't understand Mitch Jeter's kicking points. One of the national books has it out at over under 5.5. He scored 29 points in three playoff games. He's hit 7 of 8 field goals and 8 PATs. That's 29 points. Divided by three, that's well over a projection of 5.5. Mitch Jeter is healthy. He's not having any wind conditions, any field conditions. And Notre Dame, by the way, is very happy at kicking a field goal. They have one of the highest like field goal attempt rates versus like going for touchdowns. So Marcus Freeman would be happy to take 3 points against this Buckeyes offense, especially early. So I got Mitch Jeter over 5.5 total kicking points. I do see this offense getting into scoring position. Stuck. How they get touchdowns, that's going to be a struggle. That's going to be a struggle.
It's going to be tough for them to move the ball. I mean, they're going to have to be super creative, in my opinion, and Leonard's going to have to avoid making mistakes under pressure. And like the key is, I just don't know how they're going to run the ball, and then it's going to be passing downs, and Ohio State's going to be able to get pressure without blitzing, and that's where Leonard has really struggled.
Yep.
On the other side of the ball, Notre Dame's defense has been dominant all year. This is the more fascinating matchup to me because Notre Dame plays as much more man coverage than any team in college football, and they were number one in man coverage, whether you look at passer rating, coverage grade, interceptions. That's the route. They gotta win the turnover battle here. That's paramount. They can't lose the turnover battle or they're toast. So the question is, do how much man? Teams always mix it up. Notre Dame runs the most man. They're always going to mix it up, mix some man, some zone. But will they run as much man as they usually do here? Because doing that against Ohio State might be a death wish. And Will Howard was number one or number two, top three, depending on
Yep.
what metric you look at against man coverage this year. Obviously, he has three elite receivers. And how much to use? I mean, if you ask Marcus Freeman said, well, obviously you have to mix things up, which makes sense. Although their stud cornerback, Leonard Moore, said, we're not going to change who we are. It's probably something in the middle of that. My fear for Notre Dame, and the one thing I got wrong with Penn State last week is we both had wide receiver props, and the
Yeah.
Penn State wide receiver room is just so bad, and they just didn't. I don't know why they didn't attack downfield.
Right.
They didn't attack. They didn't throw the go routes. They didn't throw the fades from the slot. I don't know why. Aller was just so bad in that game. It was incredible. But Penn State has more of a gimmicky offense. My fear is that the Notre Dame defense in man is not going to be able to hold up. Because if you look, who did they face this year? How many elite receivers did Notre Dame face? I mean, in the playoffs, none at Penn State. Indiana, Surratt, he's pretty good. I wouldn't consider him elite. He had 4 catches for 67 yards. Who on Georgia? And Georgia had a backup quarterback. Arian Smith, maybe he's going to try to go to the NFL. He had 1 catch for 67 yards. You got to go to like USC. They have elite receivers, even though they were playing with their backup quarterback. Mekhi Lemon had 9 catches for 133 yards. USC put up almost 600 yards of total offense. They had 4 players with a reception of at least 20 yards in that game. And then maybe Louisville. Corey Brooks, 5 catches for 71 yards and 2 touchdowns. Colin Lacey, 5 catches for 71 yards. Louisville had 3 players with a reception of at least 20 yards. So, and then, by the way, Ohio State, one of the reasons they've surged in the playoffs is not only because I think psychologically they use that Michigan game as a rallying point. They changed some things schematically. They changed, how they use Caleb Downs, which has really paid off. Because of their offensive line injuries, they changed how they're running the ball. And they're now using more of, and I'm sure you'll get into it,
Yep.
more of the run types that Notre Dame struggles more with. So was Ohio State also going to be able to have success running the ball to set up the pass? The path for Notre Dame here, so it's a huge chess match. Like if they come out and because they do play man, that's their identity. Do you change everything at the end of the season? That's hard to do, but how much more zone do you mix in? Because we just saw Texas, they went zone heavy, said we're going to take away the explosive play, and it almost worked. Outside of a screen pass, which is just unfathomable, they gave that up, and they were at the 1 yard line, first and goal, with a chance to tie the game and force overtime. So it worked in a way. What does Notre Dame do? Now, I do, from a prop perspective, I like Egbuka over. I like Egbuka across the board. So I like Egbuka over catches. I like 4.5 juiced, 5+. I think he's going to get a lot of looks, but they're also going to they're going to throw a lot of screens to him, I think. So he's going to get like an extension of the running game. He's caught a pass. I also like over 19.5 longest reception. He's caught a pass of at least 20 yards in 9 of 15 games this year. And many of those were blowouts. And before Ohio State opened up the offense, did it in every game against ranked opponents this year, except one, I think 5 out of 6. And against Notre Dame the previous 2 years, 7 for 96, long of 23, 9 for 90, long of 31. And what I really like is a long shot. Harold Fannin. That was one of my favorite parts of bowl season, betting his all overs. Egbuka, all over 90 receiving yards, plus 350. He needs 95 to set the school record for career receiving yards since this is his last game. So even if they're in a blowout late, probably give him a couple more looks, right? There's an incentive there. So I think that if he's close to 90, he's going to get the 90. And then I think there's just a chance he gets there anyway. I think they're going to run a lot of crossers with him. I think that they're going to throw the deep balls that you need to throw against Notre Dame when they are running their cover one. Because last year, people are going to, like Notre Dame fans say, oh, we played man last year and we shut down Marvin Harrison with Benjamin Morrison. That's true to an extent. Like I think but of the, I don't know, I think he was on him like 20 or so snaps. He was also bracketed on half, but Morrison did a good job and they did leave him on an island. That's Notre Dame's gonna, like, they're not gonna completely abandon man in cover one. So these receivers are gonna have opportunities, but I do think you probably are gonna lean towards bracketing Jeremiah Smith more than anybody else. And Egbuka, his yards per route run are just as good versus man and zone. And I think he's going to get some deep shots against man. If they decide to go more zone, he's really good about finding the holes in zones and getting downfield. So I like a lot of Egbuka props. Notre Dame, I think the path is, well, it's Al Golden. What's he going to do? What's he going to scheme up? He's going to send exotic pressures. He's got the run defense has to show up. But like you're worried about your coverage too. So what are they going to do on early downs? I'm so fascinated to see, but they need to find a way to do what they've done all year. Get pressure and force Howard to make mistakes because he is vulnerable when under pressure. What do you see here?
I don't have your prop, Emeka Egbuka, over, but it plays directly into all the other props I have. So I love it. I think what you have to do is first take a look at that 10 play methodical drive that only used 4 minutes off the clock when Ohio State opened up against Texas. Because when you look at this offense, you're right, it's completely changed. They were a huge zone read team. And then when they came into the playoff, all counter. Capitalized by Quinshon Judkins' 9-yard TD run to end that first drive. It was off counter. They have been very good with counter, but the problem is that's going to run into Notre Dame, and what they do in defending counter is much better than what they do in defending inside zone, which Ohio State, the entire season was an inside zone, a little bit of outside zone, a zone read offense with their two running backs with Trevion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, and Will Howard. So my question is, do we try counter? Does Ohio State like play with their food and have weird play calling with counter and just run into a wall before they finally expose the Notre Dame interior? How quick does that happen? Because that's where the problems are, is on the interior of the Notre Dame defensive line. Now, if you look at that drive, who'd they ping? Three catches to Emeka Egbuka for 25 yards. Quinshon Judkins, 4 carries for 20 yards and ended with a TD. I think the same, exact same script. But the thing that really intrigued me about that drive, Stuck, is that they did it in 4 minutes. They averaged 25 seconds per play in the first drive. During the season, 29.3 seconds per play. And why I bet the over on open is not just because they, in the two tempo drives that they used against Texas, they were in scoring position immediately. Like they just ran shot over Texas, didn't let them get set up. What does Chip Kelly say during his coordinator press conference this week? He went out of his way twice during his presser to say Notre Dame's communication and ability to get lined up correctly is a real problem. Well, how do you take that away? Run that tempo that you ran against
Tempo.
Texas in that first drive. So I project this in the low 50s. I do like over 46, 47, 48 is key. I would take it up to that. Chip going 25 seconds
That
per.
could also lead to like a couple just quick passes out to
Yeah.
Egbuka too for his
Yeah,
reception spot.
they're gonna spam the slot and run Judkins and Henderson in between the tackles. I think they're I don't see any resistance coming towards Ohio State, except for one area. Now, the props that I did have, I like Carnell Tate over 40 and a half receiving yards. I project him at 47, so there's not much value left on that. But consider that Carnell Tate's targets, 34% of the entire season have come in the last 4 games. He had 9 targets against Texas. Carnell Tate is getting attention these days. I think that is really because Will Howard has had to veer off of Jeremiah Smith. Jeremiah Smith only had 3 targets and 1 catch against Texas. And if you ask Chip in his presser, he said, Texas rolled their coverage into Jeremiah Smith every single down. Every single time there was a pass play. Will Howard had no looks at Jeremiah Smith. And I think if you're Marcus
And look,
Freeman,
that almost worked. So like, why would you not
yeah,
repeat that?
why would Marcus Freeman, who limited Marvin Harrison to just 3 catches, just go out there, line up Leonard Moore, which I don't know if Leonard Moore can handle it on his own. He's been elite in coverage. But do you just line 6'2" Leonard Moore up there and say go one on one with Jeremiah Smith? I don't think you do. I think you go back to zone, you roll it in. I think Texas gave you the blueprint. I like Jeremiah Smith under his receiving yards, but I project him at 85 and the number's at 80. If there's some game day steam up to 85, 86, I'll take the under on Jeremiah Smith. But I do think Will Howard is going to have a day, and your prop with Emeka Egbuka is going to be into that. I took over 240 passing yards for Will Howard on the open. I project him at 262 yards. Currently, as you and I are recording, he's at 250 and a half. It's taking steam. I expect it to take steam well over 260. Plays into Emeka Egbuka, plays into Carnell Tate's overs. And, Marcus Freeman already has a proven track record of saying, I'm going to take your best weapon away, Ohio State, find another way to score. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen on this side of the ball. So, and by the way, if they even went man, right? What happens on the other side with Christian Gray and Xavier Watts? They have both severely struggled in pass coverage. I mean, I know Christian Gray had an INT. I know he had a penalty go against him, but
Well, I
that
think you would
pair,
put Gray on Smith and then roll a safety over
right.
and then use your other corners in man. And then you have Watts kind of doing his thing.
Well, they
Uh,
both allowed over 50 yaks against Penn State, and that is against wide receivers that are like some of the worst in Power Four in creating separation. You
yeah,
know,
no, Buka can fly. Like
right?
he could get this. He could get 70 on one play easily.
Yeah.
Um,
So I like the over. I like Carnell Tate over his yards up to 47. I like Will Howard on his passing yards to 260, and I'm gonna sit on Jeremiah Smith. Also, one other thing.
the other thing also is that Jeremiah last week it led to an interception. Jeremiah Smith's going to be at Ohio State for a couple more years. They
Yeah,
said he was a professional about it, that he was basically just a decoy. But Chip said he also wants to find ways to get him involved. I think Will Howard thought that as well. He had Igbukah wide open on the pick, and he tried to force it to Jeremiah Smith. So
yeah.
that's another thing you got to work for you for Notre Dame. Like roll coverage them. Like does Ohio State do they just They want to keep him happy. It's a national title. Does Howard force a throw or two to him into double coverage? And is that how you get a turnover? Like that, Notre
Yeah,
Dame's
he
going to
did
have to
against
steal a
Texas.
couple possessions. Yeah, that was exactly what happened. They were just like, I think Howard wanted to get him a look because he had Igbokwe wide open, and he was just like, I'm going to throw it to him, and it was an awful play and an easy pick.
Right. I think one thing, by the way, I project Will Howard to have a 70% chance to throw an INT, and I bet you he will try to force one in. So we'll see if Notre Dame could take advantage of that. I think the one other thing that I wanted to mention, Stuck, was an anytime TD. Like out of all the three rushers that you would look at on the Ohio State offense, which one would you pick? Judkins and Henderson are properly priced in the market on anytime TD. There was no value in them when they came out. But based upon rushing TDs on the season and based upon a little bit of a like a 20% boost that I put in the playoff games, I've got Will Howard at a 40% chance to score a touchdown here on the ground. Could be a sneak, could be inside zone because that's where Notre Dame, that's where their weakness is. That 40%, that means this number has value to plus 150. Will Howard out there is 3-1 to score at anytime TD. So I do like Will Howard if you can get it anywhere down to maybe 2-1 or even plus 150. I think Will Howard is somebody that can, the rushing TD value is there for him and not for Judkins and Henderson.
So by the way, we have a same game parlay we put together. Jaden Greathouse, over 22 and a half receiving yards. Will Howard, anytime touchdown, plus 300. And Igbokwe, all over 90 receiving yards, plus 350. To all our listeners, if you're watching or listening on your phone and you want to instantly tail this, go to the episode description. We've got DK links for this same game parlay. If you click those links on your mobile device, your DraftKings app will open up with the bet slip for that pick. Very convenient and a great way to tail. Colin also likes Mitch Jeter over kicking points,
Yep.
Will Howard over passing yards. I like all the Igbokwe props. Long shot is over 90 yards, which is in that same game parlay. Also over catches, over longest reception, 19 and a half. And then I like Aeneas Williams over receiving yards. Prediction on the game. So I make it around 7, like right around a touchdown. It's like technically I show a tad bit of value on Notre Dame, but I'm not betting Notre Dame. It's just I don't like the matchup, and I might just be still too low
Yeah.
on Ohio State. Although I thought I was like had a fair line last week against Texas, but like Ohio State did make material changes on both sides of the ball. I it's I just can't get to Notre Dame here. I don't hate the over, but I worry about Notre Dame moving the ball.
Right.
Um, I'm gonna say 28-17 Buckeyes.
It's funny because the number I had in my head was 11. Like, what alternate line would I take Ohio State up to? 11 was popping in my head. Because there is the ability for Emeka Egbuka to try to get this record. And I don't see why Ryan Day, who is being trolled by Lou Holtz every single day, would not want to pile another one
Yep.
on the Irish and hear about how he's not so soft. So I agree with you, but I'll go a little bit higher. I'll say, 31, 7. Give me to 41 points. Or I'm sorry, 48 points. Give me to 48 points. I'll say 31-17 for the over. I do have a long shot anytime, and I think it comes on the special teams, right? So the special teams, when I looked at it, Stuck, I mean, their numbers in SP Plus are both outside the top 50, and they
Well,
both,
Notre Dame's are bad because they were the worst kicking team in the country before Jeter got healthy. So that's what's skewing
right.
that.
Yeah, yeah. So when you break down, and you mentioned it, when you break down both sides of the ball, there is a place where Notre Dame is far beyond better than Ohio State. Notre Dame is top 35 in kickoff return efficiency to Ohio State being 126th. That player is Jaden Harrison. And if anybody remembers the Sugar Bowl, Jaden Harrison probably
He's
needs to be on
explosive.
your prop list. He ran back a touchdown against Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. He's had 13 kick returns this season for an average of 25.8 yards. That's some good field position. He had 18 catches this season for 223 yards. I know I'm veering off special teams, but stay with me here because he just scored a touchdown 2 games ago. He had 18 catches this season for 223. He had a TD against Virginia in week 12. Considering Riley Leonard has only thrown 19 TD passes. Jaden Harrison is more than 5% to be a receiving touchdown. Now you factor in that he just ran a kickoff back for a touchdown. The number for him to score a touchdown here at any time should be about 7%. I hit 40 to 1, put it in the app. I think some other people have hit it because the best number I can find right now is 24 to 1. The real number on Jaden Harrison is about 14 to 1. So if you need a long shot anytime touchdown, I love Notre Dame's kickoff return guy, Jaden Harrison, who should be about 7%, 14 to 1.
Yeah, very curious to watch. Because Ohio State didn't have that same like the first two games was us against the world disrespect last week, right? Everyone was expecting to win. Notre Dame can come in here, nothing to lose. Marcus Freeman's come a long way since having 10 guys on the field against Ohio State uh, in that game. He's been amazing all playoffs, and Al Golden's one of the best defensive coordinators in college football. Got a good offensive coordinator as well. I'm really curious to see what Golden cooks up and then what Freeman can do creatively, what they can do on special teams. What can they do in the middle eight? What can they do to steal a possession or two? How creative can they get? Because they're going to have to, because it's not the best matchup and they're definitely undermanned from a talent perspective. But excited to watch what Freeman and this Irish team, which, depending on your number in the Virginia game, has covered 11 straight games. Should be a good one on Monday night. Keep an eye out. We'll have a live show too Monday. I'll tweet out that link. And I'll have a write up on the game, Colin. I'll have a write up as well
We're going
on
to save our.
actionnetwork.com and the Action Network app. What's that?
I think I think we'll save this for the live show. If there's going to be a Jeremiah Love prop, it's going to be on the under his rushing yards, and it's because this is an SEC reffing crew that called the Fiesta Bowl. And by God, do they love offensive holding? They love offensive holding. 23 flags in the Fiesta Bowl. Steve Marlowe and the SEC crew calls offensive holding at a 21% clip, higher than any other head referee crew, tire
Well, that's
crew.
good for my Igbuka and
Right. And it's
our
bad for
receiving
Jeremiah
props.
Love. It's bad
Yeah.
for Jeremiah Love.
All right. Let's get to the worst beats of the year. Uh, I mean, man, I had like one great ODU getting in the back door for me against JMU and getting the 2 point conversion. Like I just went through all these games. I mean, just I'm not even through. I'm only up to week 8. Georgia State versus Georgia Tech was brutal. Central
Yeah.
Michigan shaving against Illinois. San Jose State against Boise. North Texas against Army is my number one. That was an absolute torture chamber. North Texas also going for two for no reason and then not going for two. Remember that game
Yep.
against what Memphis? Uh, Unbelievable. Western Michigan versus Marshall. ULM versus ULL, the broken run at the end. Notre
Yep.
Dame versus USC. UNLV versus Oregon State. ECU versus Liberty with the delay and the broken run
Yep.
late. Oh my God.
I got some more.
Absolute torture, Gad.
Yeah, I mean, Friday nights were an absolute fucking disaster for me this year. There was some sort of crazy voodoo shit where there was Duke Northwestern, but the big one, Rutgers -1.5 against Washington. 2.7% post-game win expectancy, like the lowest of the year. They won the game 21-18. Washington nearly 3 yards per play better than Rutgers, 42 hidden yards from special teams. Washington was 1.3 in points per possession crossing the 40. Rutgers had 3 trips past the 40, 3 touchdowns. They won 21-18 with a 98%, I'm sorry, a 2% post-game win expectancy. You haven't mentioned Oklahoma State +4.5 against Texas Tech. The Red Raiders
Oof.
had a 3.5% post-game win. They lost. I'm sorry, they won 56-48 with a 3% post-game win expectancy, tied with 2 minutes to go. Texas Tech's touchdown drive, Oklahoma State fumble, scoop, and score. Red Raiders are up by 14.
When am I ever? Yeah, then Texas scoop and score. When am I ever going to give? North Texas was against the Tulane. Those 2 point shenanigans. The North Texas against Army was one of the worst things that I've ever watched. How about Auburn versus Oklahoma?
Yep. And Auburn versus Arkansas too. Arkansas was a 5% post-game winner and beat Auburn by 10. But that Auburn, oh my God, that OU game, I was done. I was done with both teams at that point.
That was, yeah, Michigan, Oregon was
Are,
it, incredible.
Are you ready for the poster child of
Georgia
bad?
State UConn was another lucky
Yep.
one I got. That was that was nice. And then I think I just paid for that Duke Northwestern over in I think week 0 all year long. But Gad, what were you gonna say?
Well, this is going to translate into next season. The poster child for what we're talking about was one team. There were about 900 FBS games this year. Of the top 200, worst beats from a post game win expecting. I'm saying like 10%, 15%, 4 times Kansas was in that list in the top 200. Kansas had the most atrocious luck of any team that I've seen in recent years. They're going to get a major adjustment, second order win total. And that's after having like a really hot 6 games in the season. The big one that you should think about is Kansas -9 against UNLV. The Rebels won that game 23-20. 2 interceptions from Kansas in that game. Cash for 10 points made the difference. Kansas nearly 3 yards per play better. Their average starting field position against UNLV was at the 19. UNLV's average starting field position was the 45. Kansas had the worst luck through the first half of the season. They're going to be such a play on team next year.
And then I can't be remiss if I didn't mention Fresno State Northern Illinois under in the bowl game. The most dead shot under of all time. They just don't want to go for two and they go to triple overtime. Missing 25-yard field goals to end the game.
13-13,
Um,
right? 13-13, and the number was 40.
yep, miss a 30-yard field goal to win. A kid missed like 3 field goals, and no one wants to go for two. I mean, just incredible.
Thomas Hammock had a good dump.
Worst bets of the year for me. I'll throw out best bets probably Northern Illinois plus 28.5 against Notre Dame. Vanderbilt plus 14.5 against Vautech. Those are two of the bigger upsets this year. Worst bets, had plenty of those. How about NC State versus Tennessee early? Oak State versus Colorado late.
Mm.
A bunch of USF games, like USF against Navy, USF against Tulsa. People got sick of that. How about outlaying it with Alabama in the bowl game against Michigan? Yikes.
Yeah.
Uh, and then Arizona State. Like I laid it with Kansas State against them. Was wrong on them. I'm trying to think if there's any other memories.
I've got big issues. You haven't mentioned the conference yet, so you want me to go?
Yeah,
I am so tired of taking Penn State against Ohio State every goddamn year on this podcast. And it wasn't even
I
close.
try to tell you, I didn't take them.
Every goddamn year I take Penn State and Ohio
I
State.
took
They
them
didn't even
against
get a
Notre Dame
touchdown.
though.
They didn't even get a touchdown with Kodal Nicky this year. And then conversely, for you Buckeye fans that are maybe laughing at that little scenario, I've taken the Buckeyes 3 years in a row against Michigan. I cannot figure out why Penn State can't cover against Ohio State and why Ohio State cannot cover and win against Michigan. It's been taking units out of my wallet every year. Worst calls by far every year.
The memories of a season. And yeah, it's now gone again. Uh, but so one final order of business, and that's the presentation of the seventh annual Action Network Gambling Heisman Trophy. And now, the moment we've all been waiting for, the presentation of the seventh annual Action Network Gambling Heisman Trophy. Awarded to the most outstanding Division I player whose athletic excellence best enabled the pursuit of monetary gain through the art and science of wagering on college football. First, as always, we honor our past recipients. 2018, Trevor Lawrence, Clemson. 2019, Lynn Bowden Jr., Kentucky. 2020, Drew Plitt, Ball State. 2021, Bailey Zappi, Western Kentucky. 2022, Michael Pratt, Tulane. 2023, Noah Fafita, Arizona. And now, the 4 finalists of the 2024 season. Quarterback Bryson Daly, Army. Running back Cam Scatterbo, Arizona State. Defensive end, Mike Green, Marshall. And last but not least, Diego Pavia, quarterback, Vanderbilt. Mike Green, under the radar, could be a first round draft pick. Amazing edge rusher. I think he led the nation in sacks. Unfortunately, it's going to be tough for him to win it since Marshall, not his fault, but Marshall opted out of a bowl game. But they were incredible against the spread. Arizona State, incredible against the spread. Army did their fair share of damage. And we all know Pavia's success, specifically as an underdog, pulling off a number of epic, epic upsets that we will never forget. So without further ado, the winner of the 2024 Gambling Heisman Trophy is Cam Scatterbo, running back, Arizona State. Round of applause for Cam. He just edged out Diego Pavia. I know many of you are going to be upset, but speaking of 2-point conversions, Diego didn't get that 2-point conversion to cover for me for Tennessee. But more importantly, Cam Scatterbo was unreal in that game against Texas, and Arizona State finished 12-2 against the spread. I mean, they covered 7 in a row to end the season. Scatterbo was a huge part of that. He even stepped up at receiver without Tyson, that huge catch, almost upset Texas. Pavia finishes second. Bryson Daly, salute to you, Sarah, finishes third. Mike Green, nothing but respect as well, finishes fourth.
Yeah, let me throw some context behind that because this is
Pavia will be back next year, by the way. He'll have a shot. He's finished second 2 times.
yeah, well, Sark said no. Well, we'll see how that works. To put some context behind Cam Skataboo, first off, Arizona State, the only games they didn't cover were against Texas Tech and Cincinnati. Everything else can be directly related to him, especially stepping up in the passing game, like you mentioned. Only one running back had more first downs than Cam Skataboo, and that'd be Ashton Genty. But when you go over to the receiving side of it, 543 yards. Like I'm looking down the list of the top rushers in the nation. He doubled up almost anyone except Amarian Hampton and Mario Anderson Jr. Like 543 receiving yards. That's an insane number. Oh, by the way, he averaged 4 yards after first contact. He was impossible to defend. I mean, I believe I've had a Sacramento State bet every year before this year. Little did I know it was Cam Skataboo that was getting my tickets to the window. So keep your eyes on the portal and these guys that are coming from the hottest FCS offenses.
Respect the Cam. It cost me a lot of money. I paid in Arizona State. I finally learned my lesson and won some money on a prop against Texas on him, receiving prop, which is a fun cash.
Wait,
But
Arizona State covered against Texas? I didn't know. I have to stay off.
eh,
I have to stay off social media.
all right, that'll do it for us. It was a pleasure as always, Colin. We'll have a live show Monday, but thanks to the group of 5 guys, thanks to Brett McMurphy, most importantly, and our producer as well, both David Payne and Matt Mitchell. Most importantly, thanks to all of you for tuning in all season. Can't wait to do it all again next year, but we will be back every Wednesday and Friday talking college hoops. Myself, Tanner McGrath, Mike Calabrese, Greg Waddell, and then we have the guys from the three-man weave every Monday morning to keep us moving towards March Madness. Live shows will return soon on Saturday mornings as well for college basketball. So make sure you stay tuned to this channel through March Madness, which should be really fun to make up for last year, which was pretty boring with UConn. I think it's going to be an exciting tournament. So don't forget, open up the Action app, follow Parlay Express, all the long shots under one account. People really love it. That will do it. Sad day, but I'm excited for the game. Let's bring these props home, finish the year strong. It's been a fun ride. Can't wait to do it again next year. Pleasure as always, Colin. Any final words?
Uh, this was by far, I think we all feared the playoff would dilute our sport. This was by far one of the most fun seasons we've ever had. It's the opposite of what the pandemic was. So thank you to college football. Thank you to you, and thank you to Mitchell, our producer. really proud of all the work we've done, and I'm glad it's going to continue to keep going.
Yeah, it was a great season. I was so excited for the College World Cup. They just got to get the seeding right, get the bracket right with the buys, which I think they will. Super fun year. The portal craziness is insane. That's my biggest takeaway from the season.
Yeah.
I don't know if I just cut my volume in the first couple weeks, like I did that with college basketball, cut my volume early, or have to tweak some things because I just the weeks 1 and 2 was a disaster, and then I got rolling. So that's what I'm going to spend a lot of my time in the off season trying to figure out because it's like player ratings, not my specialty. But as with every sport, it's a learning process, and betting, you're never going to master it. Learn something new. And once you tackle one thing, another thing pops up. That's one of my favorite things about sports betting. You'll never truly master it. But it was a pleasure going through the grind again with you and all of you out there. So, till next time, cheers.
Peace out.